Hi, I want to thank you for coming. My name is Kelly Langley. I'm the facilitator at the Bastrop Workforce Solutions office. And today we're going to talk about submitting a solid application. So by the end of this session, I hope you learn how to fill out application to generate interviews. You want to customize your information and include some of the keywords for the applicant tracking system scan process. And we're also going to talk about the state of Texas application and how to submit a solid one of those. Now, what is the purpose of the application? For the employer, it gives them an idea to assess the applicant's qualifications, skills, education, and related work history experiences. It can also help disqualify candidates who don't seek any of the skills that they're seeking. Now, your goal as an applicant, this application is a way for you to provide information to that potential employer that reinforces your qualifications for that specific position. You want to make it easy, excuse me, for the employer to understand how you're a good fit for this company and this position and help increase your chances for that job interview. So there's different kinds of applications, and you want to be sure that you're submitting the way the employer is accepting it. That way you know they got it. You can apply online applications. Some have phone apps that you could submit. A paper application is still being accepted by some employers. And then, of course, the state of Texas application. Now, I will say this so many times to every individual I talk to. When Indeed first came out, I used to love Indeed. It was like sliced bread. It was so easy. I could say I want any job in Bastrop, Texas, and it would pull up a list, just pulling from everywhere. And all of the options were so easy for me to scroll through. And now they've even added a feature that's called the Easy Apply, where literally you click on apply now and it just asks for a name, an email address, a phone number, maybe a resume, maybe not. And you'll see that the next step, it says you submitted an application. And people just love the ease of that. But I can tell you a handful of employers that I know that come into our office and utilize our services who don't work with Indeed. So I always recommend go to that employer's website, look on their portal. If the position is there, submit it, because you know that's going to be the first place they go to look to find their ideal candidate. And if they're not paying for Indeed services and you apply with an Easy Apply, you may sit in limbo and never get seen by the hiring manager for that employer. On this slide, you'll see that the Easy Apply for the McCoy's position, it's there, you can do it, but it's also on the employer's portal. So just be sure that you go there and submit the application so that you know you have a chance at getting that interview. Excuse me. Now, I've had people kind of roll my eyes when I say this, but you do want to customize your resume for every position that you're going to apply to. You know, some people on their resume, they have an objective and they have a summary of qualifications. And a lot of people will use that summary to summarize what they've done in the past. I say utilize that space right under your contact information to summarize what you're going to do for this employer, utilizing all the words and keywords from the job description. Be sure and use those specific keywords. We never know what the keywords on the job description are, so that's why I even say put the job title in your summary qualifications so that you'll see senior buyer, which is the job title, qualifications summary, excuse me, and then everything below that is all of the keywords and skills that you possess from the job description. Now, if you're not sure what an applicant tracking system is, chances are when you upload your resume to that employer's website, it's going to get scanned and it's going to be looked for those specific keywords. So To get past that applicant tracking system, we've got some tips that you can utilize to be sure that your resume doesn't choke that system. You know, I've always told people the pretty resumes that we like to take to a job interview or a job fair, those don't utilize applicant tracking systems very well. They can actually choke the system. Remember, a computer just needs to be able to scan. So sometimes having variable line thickness in between your different sections can choke that system. It could be the font. I've seen people where they make it appear to be like a newsletter is what their resume has that feel. So just be sure that you don't have a bunch of horizontal stacked bullets, little text boxes, things of that nature. Now, if you want to run your resume through an applicant tracking system to see what kind of results you get, we've got two options, and both of them are free up until a certain point. So let me start with our option, workintexas.com. When you upload your resume, it will automatically scan and look for keywords and compare it to the job that you're looking at. So you'll get a match skill. And you can also click on those sections and go in and update to get a higher match. There's no cost for Work in Texas. You can have multiple copies of your resume and continue to navigate through to get better scores. Or the other option you can try is called jobscan.co. It's not a .com, it is a European website. And they have a really good report, and I can send you a sample report of what it looks like after you would revise your resume, right, to match the job description. And then once you think you've got hit the nail on the head, so to speak, you go to JobScan and you can copy and paste your resume in one box, copy and paste the job description in the other, and you hit submit, and it runs a comparison and will give you a report and lots of tips of how to get a higher score. So I highly recommend using both Work in Texas and JobScan. Right now, due to COVID-19, I know if you like them on Facebook and share it with your friends, they are giving more free scans. And I have some that you could utilize as well. So don't ever pay for any resource. Always reach out to your facilitator to see what options they have available. Now, when you want to create your account, you want to be sure that you're reading all the instructions so that you're submitting everything. Never put on an application to see resume. Put the information in that they're asking for. Be sure that you're being honest up front, that you're proofreading, and of course that you're being neat and professional. When you create your account, I recommend that you get like a spiral notebook, or you could have a Word document on your computer, some way to keep track of the websites and your user IDs and passwords. It will be really helpful if you have to go through a reset process, and you can keep track of all of that. And then, you know, work smarter. Don't have your passwords or anything reflective of your birthday, your social security, things of that nature. Be sure to keep a copy of all job descriptions and the resume that you submit. Remember, you're going to update that resume for every job, so you want to keep a copy so that you know exactly what you submitted. And when you go back prepare for the interview, you've got that job description so you can help reinforce your qualifications. When you get to the salary requirements, if it's possible to leave it open and it's not a required field, I would recommend leaving it open, especially if they don't have any kind of pay range in the job description. But we have some online resources that you can utilize if it's a mandatory field for you to fill out. You can go to workintexas.com and it will compare your wages on a national level. LinkedIn.com/salary will give you ideas of company and education. And then payscale.com is a good resource for new graduates' education-based experiences. Be sure that you're highlighting your positives. Describe your information in a positive manner that reinforces your skills and qualifications. Mention recent and relevant awards and recognition and all your completed education. Downplay any negatives, minimize attention to sensitive information, such as if maybe you had taken off for a sick family member, things like that. Carefully word your statements to reflect them in an honest but yet a positive approach. So, avoiding some red flags and answering some difficult questions and how you answer them could get you screened out. So, felony or misdemeanors, be sure to respond to what the employer is asking you for. If the employer is asking for felony convictions in the last 10 years, don't put down any misdemeanors or older convictions that weren't relative to what they were asking. If you have a disability and you are afraid to disclose that during the application process, it is okay for you to say no when the question is in the application, and you don't even have to answer that until a job offer is made. Gaps of employment. Some applications will require you to fill in those gaps of employment in your work history. So be sure you describe the time in a positive manner, and keep in mind that employers might consider acceptable, such as returning to school or a questionable reason like recuperating from a serious illness. When you're putting your reasons for leaving, be sure that you are giving a positive why that position ended. You know, laid off, position ended, relocated, a career change to further my education. But you wouldn't want to say anything like insufficient salary, or the position was not challenging, or I was injured on the job. Never say anything negative about a previous employer on an application. It just doesn't look good. So when you're completing the application on the work history, fill in all the blanks to the best of your ability. If the company is closed, list the business name as it was, and then you can put closed afterwards. Include the supervisors you had at the time, even if you know they're no longer there now. And be sure that you have some of those keywords from that job description in your work history, listing the most important information up at the top. Also, be aware of a resource. ONET Online is used by the Board of Labor, and you can go in and pull up job descriptions and duties associated with different job titles. So be sure that you're not shortchanging yourself on your work history. Check that out. Now, completing the application when you get to the reference section. Be sure that you've contacted your references and that they're aware and you've gotten permission to use their name and information. Also, send them a copy of the resume that you're utilizing so they know what you're passing around. Choose former managers, coworkers, people who are familiar with your work and your work ethics. And never list a reference as a friend or a neighbor. Call them a personal reference or a professional reference, depending on how you know them. And then, of course, when you get that job, remember who helped you out along the way and thank your references for their support. Oh, online assessments. They're sometimes so dreaded, but employers use these to get information. So here's some ways that you can research the employer to see if you can get some tips on their assessments. Glassdoor.com has an abundance of information on different employers and what kind of assessments they use. You want to be sure to watch your email after you submit the application, because sometimes the assessments will time out and you lose that opportunity to take them. And as you go through, read the questions and consider why the question is being asked before selecting the best response. Think about the position and how to respond to the questions and how it relates to your required skills and understanding and of right versus wrong. Now, the state of application, the state of Texas application, excuse me. You have one that is in your Work in Texas profile. So I would start there when you're utilizing an application to be sure that you're looking to see that you have everything filled out. You can go through the wizard and it'll take you through the steps, and you can have multiple versions as well, but you want to keep a copy of every one of those that you submit to help you prepare for the interview. Now, there is a section in there where you really, you kind of want to overemphasize all of your skills and qualifications for your positions. I always tell people, you know, I would detail a state of Texas application more than I would detail a private sector application because it is a point system. They don't really utilize a resume, even though it will allow you to attach one. So be sure that you are using where we have highlighted here, it's called the Special Training and Skills Qualification. You want to look at the job description and utilize everything you possibly can from that. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. If the job description said at least 2 years full-time work experience that includes analysis of work problems and interpretation of complex written material, ability to follow state and federal guidelines. Your written summary should look like this. 3 years of full-time experience that includes analysis of work problems, interpretation of complex written materials, analyze data to address problems with low performance, a working knowledge of applying state and federal rules and regulations, maintain effective working relationships with coworkers, managerials, and administration staff. As an example of how you want to overemphasize and detail your work experiences. Now, some of the common mistakes on the state of Texas application, the question asks, what days are you unable to work? And I have seen people put in there Monday through Friday. So be sure that you're reading the questions clearly. Are you willing to travel? If so, what percent? A common error is this is just left blank. You want to be sure if travel is mentioned in the job description at a certain percentage that you are matching that or going greater. If no travel is listed, it's always a good rule of thumb just to have a 25% in there to show that you're flexible. The name and location of the high school, a lot of people just list the name of their high school without including the city and state. And so be sure you include that. Your geographic preference of where you're willing to work in the state of Texas. Don't just say the Austin area, but you could be broad and say like Central Texas. Now, some more tips on the state of Texas application. Have your information on standby as you go to create some of these portals, especially Health and Human Services, our biggest Texas state employer. Their application portal will time you out if you sit too long. So just be sure you have your information and you're ready to start plugging away. The other thing to remember with any hiring process is that the state of Texas is a slow process to hire. So be positive with your job search. Also, update your summary every time you apply. Using the job description is what your marching orders are, so to speak, of what goes in there. Be sure you're detailing your qualifications. The handout will include a sample job description and completed state of Texas application, but if you need further help, please reach out and ask. So in conclusion, no matter where or who you apply with, chances are a computer is going to deem you qualified or unqualified. Update your skills for each and every time you submit an application, matching your job description. I want to thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, we're going to stop the recording and open up.